Hey YouTubers, nice to be with you people. Is it bright enough? Don't look at it, let's get it. So, I suppose I better shut the window. Cease the ambient noise, and of course my noisy shit getting out, which has been for about an hour, but never mind. Alright, well this one's mainly for Zippy. This is a show for Zippy, but like, for all of us, I guess I'll warm you up on like definitely one of my favourite guitars. And I'm just going to mong about. Well, in fact, I'll tell you what, let's have a fucking tonal demo there. I bet this is out of tune. Do. Single coils, 2 humbuckers. I think I should get some light there as well. One sec. Sound much better with that delay, wouldn't it? Try that again. Oh, I like that. Look at some gain on that. Just a bit more. I'm going to give that one more go with the old neck pickup, everything wound up. So on with what I'm actually here to tell you about, which is Zippy asked me like how I set up my like drive sound, and actually Zip, it's like I use the same sound pretty much for everything, and it's just a matter of like which combination and how much. But generally, you know what I've got there. It depends on the guitar that I'm using and the music that I'm playing, rather than the settings. So I'm generally always in like some kind of high gain amp, or amp model, or it's like for the longest time now I've been using like a lot of like front end gain on an amp, which is like, if you've bought the little orange, that is it's a very saturated amp, for me personally, to get the sort of sounds that I want to sort of really cut through, it's a mix of two things. It's like, well, more than that, but we'll go for it now. So like a modern high gain amp, and the more sort of, to be honest, the more sort of like woomphy it is, I can get away with an exceptionally muddy amp because of the way that I set it up. So I can get away with almost any modern like high gain amp. And the trick is, you don't swamp it out with bass, but you do use a lot of treble and use more middle than what most people would notice. But I'm not going to get into sort of where your actual settings are set. Really with any bit of equipment, as soon as you've got an EQ section in front of you, whack it all to 12 o'clock and just see what's like. Use your own ears and learn to trust your own ears. So I'm not going to give you specific settings, except on the pedal in a moment, but like, it's like, don't go on anything that anybody says, Zip, right? Use your ears, man. Use your ears, right? And like, too much treble is probably better than too little in the sense of like modern metal. And if you're going to sit it in a mix with everything else, when you sat on your own, just playing by yourself and doing the riffs by yourself for practice, then like more of everything that's like low end, but like a lot of the definition in the distortion of the guitar at the low end, it's felt more than it's heard at a fucking heavy metal concert, basically. It's in the real world, it's like felt more than it's heard, and what you actually need to be heard is those mids and highs. So get them right. It's almost like you could start with no bass at all. Like, I don't actually do it this way, but you could start with no bass at all and get your mids and your trebles just right, and then start pulling your mid in, your low end in. But then I guess you might end up adjusting it all over again, which is why I'm not going to get into settings, because it's like, as the bass climbs up, you then might want it to start to project a bit more and be a bit less sort of accessible on the ear. It's a difficult one, which is why instead of giving you like specific settings on amps, I'm going to ask you to trust your ears. One thing I'll say, you've got the orange, which has got a really usable EQ. I mean, it's one of the best EQs to learn what EQ does on, because you can't really fuck up the sound too much. Everything is usable to the extremes. Either way you want it, you can have it all treble, no middle, no bass, and it will still give you something that you can work with. It's a very sort of underappreciated amp, and the thing is, most people just turn it on and use it like a regular practice amp, and they're missing a trick almost by doing that, because it doesn't shine as just a regular everyday practice amp. It's nothing like an everyday practice sound. It's actually a very authentic little orange sound. So when it comes to gain, right, for thrash, the key is to get it when it just bites, alright? It's less gain than you think. So for this sake, right, now that is a sort of, it's got a super crunch on the ID core. And super crunch is a sort of modern, sort of Marshall-esque sound. It's a British sound. So the little orange amp could easily be capable of that. So that's like one of its higher gain settings. If I put it onto OD1, right, that's much the same, and that's a much more in the round sort of modern sound. Right, now I'm going to turn it back a bit to like about 10:30. And the reason for that is because I'm now going to apply this. And that's why I asked you if you had a tube screamer. Have you got a tube screamer there? Like any tube screamer will do, but look at the settings here, right? Level and tone are up to max. Drive is up to minimum. And this is the effect that it has, Zip, right? So you've got this sound, and this isn't quite heavy enough. I've taken it to where it's like got the best bite. And let's just listen to that again. That's the bite point, and I've put it now at sort of more 10 o'clock, right? Oh, bridge pickup, obviously, bridge humbucker pickup. Tell you what, let's give that some sport, because I haven't used that half enough. Ooh, it's always the pink telly. I generally start the day with the pink telly and finish it with it. That it's a lot like the Yamaha in that respect. It even feels like it come out the same factory. Alright, this is without the tube screamer, right? And that's on volume, is on half on the guitar, right? If I turn it up, listen to this. So that sounds like the telly, right? Passive pickups on half, right? All the way. Alright, so that's maximum saturation, and it's 10 o'clock on the gain there, right? Now, by hitting the tube screamer, this is what happens. So get rid of it. Listen to me turn it off and on. This is off. On. So I'll tell you what we're going to do now is we are going to just put it with a drum beat, so I can show you that, like, you could even argue that the tube screamer doesn't sound all that hot. You could say the amp sound is actually better, and it is kind of more like reactive and fuller. But listen to this when you start using a mix, right? Oh, wrong one, hang on. Stop, back. Oh, yeah. Now the tube screamer. Off. On. Anyway. You see now, I've just turned the volume down to half, like kicked the tube screamer off, and now I've got a much more sort of usable sound for sort of, you know, Hendrixy, Stevie Ray Vaughan sort of stuff. Now that's why this is, I shouldn't have done it really with this guitar, because you know when you turn the volume up it's almost like a tube screamer. In fact, so let's just quickly go back to the Telecaster so I can just quickly show you what I mean by that. Yeah, the old Jazzmaster there is a particularly heavy guitar. I'm actually using that for all my heavy recording. So like bridge pickup, yeah. Yeah, this is more indicative, right? Yeah, I shouldn't have used the Jazzmaster, it's a bit of an oddball there, but nevertheless, you get the point, right? Tube screamer on. Making the right sort of difference with this guitar, more what I like anyway. It's a bit of the Jazzmaster almost doesn't need one. You can just open the taps, right, and it's doing the thing that what I use the tube screamer for. So the tube screamer almost becomes a bit unemployed. So that wasn't the best test really. I was feeling the tube screamer is a bit oversaturated. But like yeah, this is much more like it. So in fact, just yeah. And without the tube screamer. And with it. Yeah, see what I mean? So basically I just spent a few minutes of this video invalidating my own test with a load of chugging that didn't sound like what I normally use. Well anyway, so as regards the order, so like first thing is for me, this is for me, I'll tell you what I do anyway. Like, so you'd go, let's say this is a like distortion pedal or an amp. This is something I'm going to have to review for you at some point. This is called the Sonic 8 Shark, and it's like a little, it's like a sort of little plexi sort of pedal. Yeah, I would go like tube screamer first into the drive, and let's say this is either an amp or it's a distortion pedal going into a clean amp. And so you have that set as I showed you there. So where you sort of turn up the gain so it just starts to bite. So the tone circuit just starts to bleed in, because usually at really low volume or really low gain, you know, the tone circuit isn't fully bled in, and it just depends on the circuit as to regards, you know, when that process starts. But on that, which is sort of like, you know, JCM 800-ish sort of area, Modern Marshall-ish, or the first one actually, no, that's on OD2, isn't it? All right, so that's sort of. You know, I shouldn't do equipment videos. I'm much better at just. I was watching an acoustic thing I was doing, and it was so much better. And I also found a song that's actually one of the few songs that has just real, like, I couldn't. I was trying to do it, and I was like breaking up as I was doing it. So it's an odd one. I'm going to have to get on top of that. But anyway, regardless, so tube screamer first into your drive unit of that being amp. And if you're asking about like wah pedals, like wah pedal should be the first thing on the signal chain, then into the tube screamer, and your drive section. You know, now if you're using modulation, chorus, phaser, flange, all that shit, doesn't really, it's not that it doesn't really matter. It matters an enormous amount, but you should experiment with that. And again, trust your own ears. Like, it's really important to do that. Trust your ears, mate. On top of anything that I'm doing. Once I know the specifics of the gear that you're using, I can give you like better pointers. Well, I know the orange, and the thing is, I should have done research before this video as regards what the gate. I can only go on memory, and it's like I kind of remember that either one of them on their own kind of needed to get past 12 o'clock, I think, to really start to bite, and I think that was sort of 1 o'clock areas, but I don't think it was too spare on the game, but I can't remember, because it's like I think if like you've got one up a bit, like basically there's two different sounds there. I'll have to get you to go back to my review of it, because my memory's foggy of it at the minute. Can't go wrong on some things. So so lastly, if you haven't got a tube screamer, get a Behringer one for like 16 quid off of Foman, or 20 quid off of Amazon. It's called the Vintage Overdrive. It's the green one, the Behringer one. That's a perfectly adequate one, and it's buffered as well. So it's like you've got to have a buffer somewhere. But going into that little orange amp, what it does is it just it makes everything pop out and puts emphasizes, for me anyway, emphasizes all the bits of like EQ, the bandwidth. It emphasizes all the bits of the sound that are most meaningful, that carry through in a live situation, where you've got like bodies and space, air itself, air molecules themselves are sort of like insulating by nature, but so it's like the further you get away, the more you start losing your definition, and it's like the tube screamer just pushes everything into that like ripe zone. I mean, all the great thrash players, all the ones whose sounds I really like, seem to use them in front of an already like driven unit. But if you listen if you can get isolated tracks, if you can go back to your favourite thrash albums and get isolated tracks and go to your favourites, the Kerry King, for example, like way cleaner than what you'd expect, and it's because you need the percussive pop, right? This is key zips, right? You need your percussive pop. Now, if you're oversaturated, right? Right, so if you're oversaturated like that, alright? There's just a load of sponge in the sound. It's got no definition, it's not tight at all. Now I've just gone down to 12 o'clock there, and this is really high gain. But what you'll find is if I just go back to 10 o'clock, which is where my ears told me that it sounded good with the tube screamer. Right, let's listen now. See, like there's no extraneous noise. It's very clean between the notes. It's tight. It's got a crunch that's dynamic, because like in the tiny little like sections of sound as it crosses through those milliseconds in your eardrum, it's like how many bits to make the crunch, right? A crunch is basically an on and off, basically, like but you could chop it down to individual bits, right? It's basically spikes of distortion, in that sound, right? And it's like the peaks of those are what you're picking up, and that's what makes the distortions. And so it's like a strobe light to some degree, right? It's purring, right? And so if you've the more when you're saturated, there's loads of those little spikes per millisecond in your eardrum, and so it smooths it out. Do you get me? And it starts to go squishy, like when you start hitting things. Now, the less of those spikes there are per the millisecond in your eardrum, the more defined it is. Okay, because you can, yeah. So you're getting like ping, 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 ping. I mean, little patterns of it. When you start using, like, you know, asymmetrical clipping and like stacking a pedal into another pedal and stuff like that, you start to get, and with tubes, you start to get like a very playful drive. And so it's organic. And so those spikes are in like little patterns. And you can you know, your ear can read them, and it's excited by the complexity of it. Less is more in the case of high gain.